Earlier today, I posted a video showing me rendering one frame from a video for the intro to my pop development videos, and it's generated a lot of conversation and comments. So I thought I'd hit it again, play around a little bit, and I'm going to show you here what I came up with as far as rendering. So people have asked me in the comments, different types of hardware you can use to speed up rendering, and of course, the faster your computer, better video card, RAM, that sort of stuff, the quicker you can render. There's also things you can do in rendering and in creation that can speed things up. Sometimes, if you spend more time creating things a different way that might be harder to create them, you render faster. Other things you do is like adjust the anti-analysis here, or Alice, yeah. And then you can uncheck that or change the number of samples there. In some cases, that might lower the quality depending on exactly what it is you're rendering. Other things you can do as well. But what I'm going to do here, what I said in the original video was that the issue of the slow rendering had to do with the alpha channels, the transparency on the planes, which is somewhat true and does slow down the rendering a little bit. But I have found, playing around a little bit, that it might be more of the lighting I was using, but the way I was using the lighting was due to the alpha channels, and I'll show you all this right now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add a plane for our ground plane, scale it up a bit, and then I'm going to import an image as plane, just as I did in the original video. I'm going to go and I'm going to grab this tux image here. I'm going to set it to shadeless, use alpha, pre-multiply, and then I'm going to grab it and move it up a little bit. I'm going to hit F12 there. There you can see our image with the transparency, the alpha channel there, but you notice the shadow is square. It's like the plane. Well, simply if you click on the ground plane, or any plane that the shadow is going to be cast on, and we say add a material if it doesn't have one, and we come down here to the bottom to shadow, and we click receive transparent, now you can see the shadow is shaped like the tux. But I did want a softer type shadow. Now, what I would normally do in this case is probably use a ambient occlusion, which does slow down rendering, make it multiply, and use environment lighting. If we hit F12 now, you can see that we do have a softer shadow that is still shaped like the penguin, but in the original project, what I came across here, if I go into my front view here, I'm going to grab that plane and move it way down close, just above our ground plane, and I'm going to hit F12 now. You can see that for some reason, when you're using the ambient occlusion and the environment lighting, when that tux plane gets close to the ground plane, it's still casting a shadow from the plane, the square plane. So that's the issue I came across. So what I decided to do was remove those and change my actual lighting here, my lamp here, into an area lamp. Change the distance down. Energy down to 0.5 on that. And I actually set the samples up to this to 6 and the size up to 6. And this is the sample level. The higher this is, the slower the rendering is going to be. So it wasn't extremely slow, but I definitely think I should have looked at the timing before. I definitely think it was a little bit longer using that. And what I also did in the original video was I cloned the light like this to get different lights, lighting effects. Set that to 0.2. And as I said in the original video, which I haven't posted yet, this is kind of a technique that I picked up from Andrew over at Blender Guru. So we're just making these other lightings here and other lamps. And what I should have done is left the main light at 6 or so and turned the samples down on the other ones, and I didn't. So I left them all at 6, which is one of the reasons it slowed down the rendering. Last time I rendered this out, it took 2 seconds. This time it took almost 6 seconds, so almost 3 times as long by changing the lighting like that. So that's fine and dandy, but when I got a lot of these going, it slowed it down greatly, and using all these samples. So one of the things I could have done is definitely turn down the samples on these back 2 lights. I'll turn them each down from 6 to 2, leaving the main light up at 6. And last time we got 5 seconds, and this time we're back down to almost 2. So that's one of the reasons. And luckily I haven't rendered out the other video yet. I can go back in and lower the samples on that. I just forgot to do it when I cloned them. So definitely turning down the samples helped with that, and it didn't really change the quality of the image, the render, that much. So that's definitely something I can do. But I also wanted to go another option and look at the difference here. Is here in GIMP I have the image of the tux, and I used the wand tool to select all the empty area, and then I did an invert of the selection. So now just the tux is selected, and then I went selection to path, and that created in our layers and channels and paths. If I go to the path, you can see here we have a selection path. And then I went export, and I exported that as an SVG. I've done this many a times in tutorials, and that gives us a path that we can now import into Blender. So what I'm going to do is, for right now, I'm going to move that out of the way a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to File, Import, and I'm going to import a SVG file here. And I'm going to go to where I saved that to, which I saved it in my temporary directory as BSVG for bird. And let me go to wireframe mode. There it is. We got, and you can do this with simple shapes like this. If it was a real complex image, doing this would be a lot more difficult. But there we have a path that is shaped like that penguin. I can also make sure that he's centered, right, like so. And if I do 2D, and we're in textured mode, you'll see that he has a texture there, or he's not just a wireframe. And F12, you can see we've got the shape of the penguin. So what I could do here is, with him selected, give him a material, turn down the specularity of him, go to textures, new textures, and make it a image, and I'm going to open up my image of my bad tux one. So there we go. If I was to render this out now, and actually if I was to convert this to a mesh and change this to, why'd that get so dark? Anyway, if I render it out, you can see that it's rendering as a tux. Now, it isn't perfectly lined up. We have a little bit of a white border here, something that we could adjust in our UV layer editor, image editor here, and line it up so we don't get that white border. But for right now, it's not a huge deal. So you're putting a little more effort into this way. What I could do now is, if we grab this tux and put it right here, we can render out, and you can see that besides that little white border, which is barely noticeable, and actually if I select this, okay, pre-multiply is already selected on that. Doing it this way will speed up the rendering a little bit. I thought it was going to speed it up a lot because it didn't have to work with that alpha channel. But another thing I could do here, which right now if I look, this is taking, about 5 seconds for this image to render, 4.5 seconds. But let's see what happens, and I don't know what's going to happen because I haven't tried this yet. Removing all those lamps, going to the world, going to ambient occlusion, multiply, environment lighting, hitting F12, and seeing how it renders now. There we go. Definitely a little bit different, depending on what you're going for. We still have the soft shadow. You can see the one that is the flat plane with the alpha channel is getting the plane, the square shadow, where our one that we imported from the path does not have that square shadow. So we fixed that problem, and going this way, we saved, I think it was like 4.5 seconds. So we saved 1.5 seconds per frame in this case. And obviously, if we had more of these guys, it would make a larger difference. So there are things you can do and tweak. Now, definitely, it looks different than the render before. I don't have the multiple lightings with different shades, although there's things you can do with the environment lighting as well. All depends on what the look you're going for. But I do have a soft shadow, which is what I originally going for. And we did cut 1.5 seconds. So we cut like basically like a third off of this this render. So I mean, instead of being 3 hours, it would only be 2 hours if I was rendering out something large, you know. So the little things do make a difference, and when you're talking seconds in rendering, when you're talking about doing a video that's 30 frames a second, it can make a big difference in the long run. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out, there is a way to make it so you can view the texture while you're in this mode. Oh, maybe if I add a lamp. It's because that's shadeless. I shouldn't have made that shadeless. Let's see if I made this shadeless. There we go. So yeah, the only reason everything was black is because I have no lighting. I'm using environment lighting, which doesn't show up here. But if I had a lamp, you would be able to see that without making it shadeless. So yeah, that's just playing around, showing you different options, since we're on the conversation of speeding up rendering. And also, like we said, it was just about 3 seconds, 2.99 seconds to render that out, 3.02 this time around. Another thing I can do, like I said, I can go here, and if I turn off this anti-alley, I always thought it's an analysis, but it doesn't say that. Anyway, wow, we just cut 1 1/4 seconds off that. What this does, though, is when you do have an object, you can see, like right here at the edge of this tux, it's a little more pixelated. It isn't as smooth of a line. If we run it again, you can see it's definitely smoother, and higher this number, the smoother the edge of an object would have. But now when you're working with the alpha channel, you can turn that off completely, and I don't think it will make a difference because you're not working with the edge of an actual object. So these are just thoughts, things we can look at. I thank you for watching. Please visit filmsbychris.com. Go to filmsbychris.com/POP. That's Chris with a K, for more on pop. And I thank you all for watching. Have a great day.